The harlot Babylon is preparing the nations to receive the Antichrist. The harlot Babylon will be a religion of affirmation, toleration, no absolutes, a counterfeit justice movement. They will feed the poor, have humanitarian projects, inspire acts of compassion for all the wrong reasons. They won't know it. Beloved, they will be sincere, many of them, but their sincerity will not in any way lessen the impact of their deception. The fact that they are sincere does not make their deception less damaging. I believe that one of the main pastors as a forerunner to the harlot movement, it's not the harlot movement yet, it's Oprah.
Oprah Winfrey, harbinger of the Antichrist, but she seems so nice. That's the point. That was one of the endorsing pastors of the Stadium Prayer event in Texas, to which potential Republican presidential candidate Rick Perry has invited all 49 of the rest of the nation's governors. The research group Right Wing Watch has been putting together sort of the collected works of the people who Rick Perry is doing this prayer event with. I think with a growing sense of urgency that Perry is being taken seriously as a presidential contender. One of the men who Perry is doing this event with is John Hagee, who had a brief scandal cameo in the last presidential election, you might remember, after he endorsed John McCain for president. John McCain was delighted to get that endorsement from John Hagee until the clips of Hagee calling the Catholic Church the Great Whore started turning up, and his sermons about God sending Hitler to hunt Jews so they'd all go to Israel.
God sent a hunter. A hunter is someone who comes with a gun and he forces you. Hitler was a hunter. How did it happen? Because God allowed it to happen. Why did it happen? Because God said, my top priority for the Jewish people is to get them to come back to the land of Israel.
When he was running for president in 2008, John McCain had to retroactively reject John Hagee's endorsement to avoid the smell of the God-sent Hitler sermons. But Rick Perry is doing a prayer event with that same pastor in 3 weeks. And based on what we know of the other pastors and endorsers with Rick Perry, that God-sent Hitler guy will probably feel right at home.
Hitler discovered that he could not get straight soldiers to be savage and brutal and vicious enough to carry out his orders, but that homosexual soldiers basically had no limits in the savagery and brutality they were willing to inflict. Counterfeit religions, alternative religions to Christianity, have no First Amendment right to the free exercise of religion. Permits, in my judgment, should not be granted to build even one more mosque in the United States of America. Not one. President Barack Obama nurtures this hatred for the United States of America, and I believe nurtures a hatred for the white man. President Obama is half white and half black. Herman Cain is all black. He's authentically black. He is the real black man in the race.
Days are coming when we're going to have to risk our lives to stand for truth in this society. 600,000 men died on the battlefields of America, and if God required it for slavery, what will it mean if God requires it for America, for the bloodshed of 50 million babies?
The blackbirds fell to the ground in Beebe, Arkansas. Well, the governor of Arkansas's name is Beebe, and also there was something put out of Arkansas called Don't Ask, Don't Tell by a former governor. This was proposed Bill Clinton. And so, could there be a connection now that we had the repeal of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell?
There's a statue in New York Harbor called the Statue of Liberty. You know where we got it from? French Freemasons. Listen, folks, that is an idol, a demonic idol, right there in the middle of New York Harbor. The Illuminati, which is really above Freemasonry, has stated it as their goal to limit the world population to no more than 500 million. Do you realize that means getting rid of all of us? To get from 6 to 7 billion down to 500 million, you're going to have to kill a lot of people off. What do you think the health care bill is?
I know. And of course, don't forget Oprah Winfrey, harbinger of the Antichrist.
She is winsome. She is kind. She is reasonable. She is utterly deceived.
So this is who Rick Perry is doing his prayer event with at Reliant Stadium in Houston. Rick Perry also being taken very seriously as a potential savior candidate, no pun intended, for the Republican presidential field. Politico.com reporting that he has been reaching out to Iowa Republican caucus goers and activists by phone. Also that a top fundraising bundler for President George W. Bush is convening potential big dollar Republican fundraisers for Rick Perry in Austin later this month. But the reason Rick Perry is being taken seriously by more than just the God-sent Hitler people is because he can supposedly court them while also preaching good sense about the economy. That was the news out of Rick Perry's camp today as he met with the former president of Pakistan. The line from Rick Perry's people was that Pervez Musharraf sought out and wanted to talk to Rick Perry about economic policy. And that's what I think is the single most interesting thing about the Rick Perry stadium prayer thing. With all the God sent Hitler and don't ask, don't tell, killed the birds in Arkansas pastors. The most interesting thing, I think, is the reason Rick Perry says he is convening this thing in Texas. He says he's convening it because it is supposed to help with policy. And I quote, "Fellow Americans, America is in crisis. We have been besieged by financial debt. Some problems are beyond our power to solve. We will gather to pray for a historical breakthrough for our country. There is hope for America. We will find it on our knees." The prayer meeting, the way we will bring down the national debt that we are besieged by, he says, is at the prayer meeting. He says this prayer meeting at the stadium in Texas is about policy.
This is Governor Rick Perry, and I'm inviting you to join your fellow Americans in a day of prayer and fasting on behalf of our nation. As an elected leader, I'm all too aware of government's limitations when it comes to fixing things that are spiritual in nature. That's where prayer comes in, and we need it more than ever. With the economy in trouble, communities in crisis,
and so on and so on and so on. The prayer event with the God-sent Hitler pastor and the Statue of Liberty is a demon pastors, that whole event is because that's where we're going to figure out policy. That's where we're going to figure out how to help the economy being in trouble. Which is why you should know, particularly if Rick Perry is going to run for president, that at least one of the people he is doing this prayer event with in Texas has theories on economic policy. Really, really amazing theories about sex with demons and its potential effects on the economy.
The sun goddess visits him in person and has sexual intercourse with the emperor. It's a very, very powerful thing. So the emperor becomes one flesh with the sun goddess. And that's an invitation for the sun goddess to continue to demonize the whole nation. Since the night that the present emperor slept with the sun goddess, the stock market in Japan has gone down. It's never come up since.
So Japan's economic troubles, those are because the Japanese emperor had sex with the sun god demon. America's economic woes, we await a diagnosis from Governor Rick Perry after his Let's Pray for a Fiscal Policy event with the Sex with Demons guy. August 6th, Houston, we are all invited. Joining us now is Wayne Slater, senior political writer for the Dallas Morning News. Wayne, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Great to be with you.
Is Rick Perry going ahead with the prayer event with the stock markets down because of the Sex with Demons contingent? Is this a sign that he is running or a sign that he isn't running for president?
Oh, it's a sign that he is running for president. I don't know if he's finally made that decision, but all signs are in that direction. What Perry understands, and frankly what I really found out when I was in Iowa about a week ago, was that the ticket into winning the Republican nomination isn't exclusively talking about Tea Party fiscal issues, but it's are you right on this with the social conservatives, the religious conservatives, that a lot of folks thought weren't important anymore. In fact, they are important. There's a lot of overlap between religious conservatives, Tea Party activists, and that overlap, whether you call them the Tevangelists or not, are going to be crucial in picking the nominee. Now, the problem for Perry is he wins the nomination for the Republican nomination, but then what does he tell general election voters who remember him cavorting with birthers and birchers and secessionists and dominionists and Christian Zionists? And I think that might be a problem.
The thing, that is an issue that I think I sort of saw coming. The difference between Rick Perry's case that he's going to make in Iowa and elsewhere if he's running to Republican primary voters and how he explains himself to the general. What I didn't see coming is the relationship between Rick Perry's professions of faith and his association with religious figures like this and policy. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but do we need to understand the, sex with demons brought down the stock market in Japan thinking in order to understand his policies, how he would actually like to govern the country?
Actually, I think we do. I think that part of this argument, part of this Tea Party idea about limited government is not to get rid of government completely. It is to have a different kind of government with policies with respect to not simply gay marriage and life and religious expression, but also spending and taxes, which under this more Christological, this more Christ-centric view of government, which some of these folks believe was the original intent of the founders, this kind of policy, a more religious form of government where the separation of church and state isn't so clear, will really dictate policy. It's a form of government and a concept about government that says that things like spending, things like taxes, things like less regulation are moral issues and, in fact, moral absolutes. That's why you can't get compromised right now on the debt ceiling, although it looks like, as you said at the beginning of the show, there will be a form of compromise. It's because fundamentally it's not just the social issues, but the economic issues, the policy issues that have a moral dimension.
There is a bit of a controlled experiment going on here, though, because with John Hagee, we had an endorsement by John Hagee of John McCain that he was forced to renounce. It was an embarrassment and a backstep for John McCain because of Hagee's radicalism. We've now got Rick Perry, with that knowledge, still going ahead in this event with Hagee. We've also got the lead sponsor of this event, Brian Fisher and the American Family Association, saying overtly nobody but Christians have religious freedom in America, and making that really in a way you don't have to interpret. They're making it a very bold statement. Does that reflect a calculation by Rick Perry and his political advisors that this time around, if that sort of endorsement happened, the Republican nominee wouldn't have to renounce it? You could get away with it this time.
I think that is the implication of that. That doesn't mean that Rick Perry, if he were elected president, would impose some kind of theocratic government. He actually, look, I've watched him for 10 years as governor, and he's a fairly conventional, if conservative, executive of a state. But what it does mean is that this is a different year. This is a different kind of dynamic where you have a combination, as I said, these Tea-evangelists who are both Tea Party and evangelicals who have the power and the influence looking for a winning candidate, or a candidate they envision can be winning. And that is something that these folks, Rick Perry believes he can get away with. John McCain was worried about how it would look if he was associated too closely with this exotic religious view of John Hagee. Rick Perry knows Hagee. He's been to his church. Rick Perry isn't worried. And the moment that any of these social conservatives, Tea Party activists in Iowa and South Carolina and Florida see your show tonight, that will only confirm their support for someone like Perry.
If that is so, I hope they will all tweet me about it tonight because it makes the Twitter feed really fun to read. Wayne Slater, senior political writer for the Dallas Morning News. Invaluable insight with this. Thank you so much for your time, Wayne.
Great to be with you.
All right, so Republicans are outraged about a brand new cause nobody even knew was a cause. They say we must protect the incandescent light bulb. How dare we try to save billions of dollars in energy costs? Ed Schultz will have that story right after the show. And we've got preliminary election results from the anti-Scott Walker recall elections in Wisconsin tonight. Coming up and more. Please stay with us.